You are now listening to the A Dose of Disruption podcast, powered by Experian. Weekly compelling conversations on making money moves and growing your network. The place where you can learn to be you and do you all at the same time. I'm your host, Shelly Bell, and now, let's see what this week's Level Up looks like. What's up, y'all? Welcome back. We're so glad to have you here, and it's time for our Shelly Brief. Shelly Brief. All right. So, okay, it's interesting. I know that this has been talked about all over the place, and by the time you hear this, it'll be a couple weeks in, but I don't think we'll ever forget this. But I really want to talk a moment, and I said to myself I was not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about this craziness. I'm just keep on moving, talk about other topics that are in the world, but I at least have to say something, okay? So I'm thinking what I've been thinking lately about the Trump supporters storming the Capitol, right, is that I'm so intrigued by it because the speaking to privilege. So I think it's one layer to say like, oh, like if that was black people, they would have started shooting. Like, yes to that. And I don't mean to say it that way to make fun of it or minimize it. But if we zoom out a little bit, because I'm all about zooming out and honing in, right? I think sometimes we're among the trees and can't really see a whole lot that's going on, but we can definitely tell when a tree falls or there's a forest fire somewhere, right? So I want to zoom out a little bit and hone in on this bigger, like a bigger picture. So yes, if there was black people, there would have been a different outcome. And though, let's back up and just look at this, like the level of privilege that this speaks to. So law-abiding black male citizens get killed by police, right? And then a group of people decide to, not a group, a community of people, people around the world decide to protest, march peacefully for the most part. And people who believe in them and believe that this was wrong also decide to protest and march with them, right? So, and then there's like, oh, Black Lives Matter, whatever, all lives matter, blue lives matter, right? Now, that is, okay, law-abiding citizen gets killed by police and the society decides to, march about it. And the people who even believe in, the people who are with or advocates for, allies to Black Lives Matter, they also decide to protest. A bunch of people, okay, there's that, right? And then there is a bunch of people who based on their belief in a law-breaking citizen, right, decide to storm the entire Capitol building, right? And I mean punching windows out. I mean taking pictures of people's offices, all kinds of stuff. And never once do they have to think about dying. So even the people who are allies to the Black Lives Matter movement have to also think about dying, right? Like, and I'm using dying as could be potentially an extreme. The protests have been peaceful and we have had people die, but it hasn't been too extreme. But I'll say that, like, even the people who are allies to the Black Lives Matter movement have to think about being harmed in the course of them marching for a law-abiding citizen being killed, right? And then these people who are marching and rallying for a law-breaking citizen never once think about being harmed in their efforts to show their support and rage against this thing. Like, we got to sit with that for a minute. And say, like, we could break that down to like specific levels and things, but like broadly, there's something wrong here. If the people who are actually supporting the law-breaking person, and like large crowd decides they can further break laws or further like rage against the machine in a different way, they never have to even think about being shot, killed. Also, just want to say before I end this Shelly Brief that I've been to the Capitol before, And there's no way that they found those people's offices so easily without somebody knowing that they knew where these offices were. Okay? Because just walking around the Capitol, everything looks the same. You would get freaking lost trying to find a freaking bathroom, let alone Nancy Pelosi's office. Right? Like so I'm like, okay, no, somebody knew what was up. Somebody, and that's my, granted, I don't know, as I speak right now, there are deep levels of this has not been proven, so I may sound a little bit conspiracy theory like, but based on my personal experience visiting the Capitol, like walking around in the Capitol, those offices you're not able to find them just so easily. It's not like Nancy Pelosi's office is pink and, and then the other senator's office is green. And no. All these offices look pretty much exactly the same. And you will get lost walking around in there. All the walls look the same. The floor, the carpet looks the same. The freaking marble tables look the same. Like, you would get lost in there. So for them to be able to storm in and in this short amount of time, go in, find people's offices, take pictures, hold up, that is just absolutely mind blowing to me in and of itself. But again, zooming out and honing in and saying the level of privilege where you actually know, not you think, that you can do certain things and you will never ever get shot. Nobody's going to push you. Nobody's going to harm you. But even the people who are rallying behind the greatest of causes, whether it be immigration or whether it be, for underrepresented people and minorities in this country, have to also think about, even the people with privilege who are advocates and allies, have to also think about being harmed in rooting for law-abiding citizens, where a person who is rooting for a law-breaking citizen doesn't even have to think twice about that simply because of the demographic that you fall in, the color of your skin. We got to visit that, y'all. Like, it's just getting to be too much. It's just too much. It's just too much. Right now, DC is shut down in multiple ways. You have roadblocks and National Guard here blocking things off, and it's literally becoming too much. So, but on the bright side, today we can talk about how to move our money around to improve our lives, improve our credit, and actually, have a little bit of fun with how we want to live and be in 2021. I am optimistic. I'm a serial optimist, so I believe that things are going to get better, and I want you to believe the same. So keep hope alive and let's keep thriving. But here's how we're going to do that in business. Today, we are talking to Rod Griffin, who is the leading expert on credit at Experian. And I'm super hyped to jump into this conversation, so let's go. All right, I'm so excited today. We have Rod Griffin here from Experian, and he is the leading credit expert at Experian, which I'm so excited. How does one even get a title, Rod, like the leading credit expert at Experian? We'll jump into that in a minute. I just want to welcome you to A Dose of Disruption. How's it going? Happy New Year.
Hey, Shelly, good to be here. Great New Year so far, relatively, I guess. Fingers crossed. But and how do you get here? I guess gray hair and time and dumb luck for me.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. So one of my favorite questions to ask is, you could be doing anything, anywhere in the world. What was your journey to, and how did you get to Experian?
Yeah, well, and it was kind of exactly that. I went to journalism school, so no background in finance, was working at a little newspaper in Kansas, and from there moved to Dallas because my dad had gotten a transfer with his phone company, and I came to visit and realized there's a job market there, and ended up working in municipal government communications for a city in Texas. And then my wife, we were looking through the one ads for our stepdaughter. And I saw an ad, this was 23, almost 24 years ago, saw an ad for Experian needed someone to write education content for them. And I just kind of said to my wife, I think I could do that. She said, send a resume. Well, I love what I'm doing now. It's just a great job, great job security, great benefits, not great pay, but doing okay. And she said, well, send a resume anyway. So, okay, why not? So I did. And here I am 23 years later. And it good fortune and dumb luck. So, and then from there, it's learning a lot about how credit reporting works in 23 years in the field. And it's always, my job has always been around helping people understand what we do and how they can use credit to empower themselves and see it as a financial tool rather than a barrier or a financial problem.
Yeah, that's great. Did you always see credit this way? So like prior to working at Experian, did you like, you don't have to necessarily tell all your personal credit business, but I mean like
Yeah, no.
did you view it as this prior to like getting as much education as you have now?
No, absolutely not. It was a complete mystery for a long time. I can remember the first loan I got was outside of student loans, which is a whole different story. But I bought a used motorcycle, and I went to the little bank in that little town in Kansas and applied for a loan. And the banker said, well, I need to check your credit. And he left, and I was standing there at the counter, and he was gone for like 20 minutes. And he came back and it said, it looks like your credit's good enough. That bike will probably kill you, but I have to give you the loan. And I went, okay, you'd have no idea what you're talking about. But I also knew in a little town that he had wrecked his little convertible too. And I said, the bike's about as big as your convertible. So none of your business what I do with the bike,
Right.
And it didn't. I didn't wreck it. So it was good.
Okay. That's good to know. So now, coming into the experience, and a recent Experian survey shows that 30% of people want to improve their credit in 2021. What is the first thing that they should be thinking about when they're saying, because here, going to different scenarios, let's say here you are, maybe you're a person that feels like your credit is just trash. You don't even want to look at it. It's funny. I'm trying to find the right meme to show like somebody like looking at something from a distance. 'Cause I feel like that's how people look at their credit, like don't even want to look at it. It's like, but what would you say would be like a really great step for someone to take in the direction of improving their credit?
And I have the same experience when I speak to groups. I usually ask, who's looked at your credit report? And their heads go down. And I said, well, why? Because I don't want to know what's there. I tell them,
Right.
You can't do anything about it until you know what's there. And it's probably not as bad as you think. And so that's really step one. Get your credit report, know what's in it. And it's easy to do. You can go to annualcreditreport.com. It's free once a week from each of the 3 credit bureaus. And it's really easy to read. It's not like the version that lenders see that are really set up for computer coding. What you get when you get your personal report is very simple, laid out in sort of sections, easy to read and understand. Get it and know what's there. That's the first thing that empowers you, is to know what you're starting with. And then you can use it to look for things that you need to work on and get a credit score. May not be as bad as you think either. Probably isn't. But get the risk factors that go with it. So they'll tell you exactly what you need to work on your credit report, and start there. I mean, know what's there. And then it's really 2 things. You have to make your payments on time. So if you're behind, you need to catch up if you can. And the second is usually credit card debt. When I talk to people, if you can reduce your credit card debt, that's going to help you a lot. And right away. And that's what I always tell people is credit's a financial tool. Debt's the financial problem. And if you use credit well, like business people do, they'll invest in credit so they can use their cash to invest in investments and they can earn by investing 3, 6, 8, 10% returns while they're borrowing at 1 or 2 or 3% or 4% or 5%. So they use the bank's money to spend and they make money with their money. And that's what we want people to do.
Use the bank's money to spend and make money with your money. That is a tip. Okay, we're gonna have to make sure we put that somewhere big. Like use the bank's money to spend money, and use your money to make money. I love that. That's so awesome. It's such like a really great point for people to know. So one of the things that's always puzzled me is the difference between the credit check platforms or the credit score. So you have like And I think I have all of them. I think I have Credit Sesame, I have Credit Karma, and I have Experian Boost, which I really love Experian Boost because it also offers you the opportunity to add extra things that you pay on time automatically always to your credit so that it can help build your credit. So if you have a Netflix account that you always pay, if you have your phone bill that you always pay on time, cable bill that you always pay on time, you can actually through Experian Boost add these things to your credit so that it can build great credit as you go along. But it's still kind of challenging to understand, like, and then I can go through my bank and look at my like FICO score. Then I'm looking at Credit Karma, it says one thing, Credit Sesame says another thing. Could you give any insight on like what's happening there? What is the actual right score? Is it a range? Because I've also heard that like when I'm looking at buying some property, that they actually take a range and it really is like separate depending on what you're doing. It could be a car range, could be it could be a range for a house. So could you help my audience understand where are all these tech platforms actually calculating and how does that all come into one score?
Yeah. So I'll see if we can make this better and not worse. So the way to think about it is this. There are 3 credit reporting companies. So Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. We compile the credit reports and we compete just like Ford and General Motors and Dodge, right? So they make cars and they're kind of similar, but they're a little different. Same thing with the credit bureaus. We all do basically the same things, but we do them a little bit differently. And we each think we do it better than the others. So better information, more accurate, more current, and so on. But you have 3 credit reports. That's the important thing to understand because you can get your reports from the credit bureaus. When you go to some of those others, Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, any of the credit monitoring services like Experian or anyone else's, they get the information from the credit bureaus for your credit report. And then they decide which score they're going to work with. And there are hundreds of different credit scores. They're all real. They're all relevant, all meaningful. Lenders decide which scores they're going to use. So that's where it gets confusing. So if you think 3 credit reports, if you know what's in your credit reports and you take care of that, you're going to make all of your scores better. That's the first thing to know because every score uses the information from your credit reports to do the calculation. When you get into credit scoring, that's when it gets confusing because it's a separate thing from credit reports. And there are companies that create credit scores, FICO, Vantage Score. The major banks have their own scoring divisions. And there are scores for different types of lenders and different types of lending. So you mentioned buying a house, for example. They use scores that are used specifically designed for mortgage lending to determine whether you'll pay that mortgage bill on time. If you're buying a car, the auto lenders use auto scores, or as in automotive scores. So for cars. So if you're buying a car, they want to know you'll pay the car loan on time. They don't care as much about your mortgage or your credit cards. Getting a credit card, they have scores that say, yeah, you'll probably pay your credit card on time and help them determine that. They don't really care about your car loan or your mortgage loan so much. So there are different scores. If you work with a credit union, they have different scores than a national bank because their customers are different. And the way that their customers manage their credit is different. And so their scores are designed to help identify risk with their customers. So that's when it gets kind of confusing. And it's really about having scores that predict the level of risk based on that particular lender's needs. And so they all use credit report information. So what it comes down to is if you get your Experian credit report, you're going to see all of the same information, all of the information that a lender gets and that the scores used to do the calculation. So always go back to the credit report first. If you get a score, ask your lender for information about that score. What score is it? What are the risk factors that they got when they calculated it? Because those risk factors say here are the things you need to work on that most affected it. And then there are ranges. So that also gets confusing. If you want to make a bet, I can help you win a bet about any credit score. If you're betting, men don't bet your wives because wives have better scores than men generally. So you'll lose that one. I've lost that one. So to my wife, she reminds me of that. But there are lots of scores with different ranges. And so it's important to ask your lender, what's the range, and look at that score. The other thing I tell people is don't try to compare numbers, because that's what will happen. If you get a score from Credit Karma, they use a Vantage score. If you get a score from Experian, we're using a FICO 8 score is what we provide to you. So those numbers won't match, but they'll probably mean the same thing in terms of risk. So look at what the information is that you get with that score. Just as an example, I get 5 or 6 scores every year, just like everybody else. I go out and buy them. And there is usually about a 150-point difference between the highest score and the lowest score. And it doesn't bother me because they're different scores with different scales. And when you look at what they say, they all say I have really good scores. And that's what matters. Look at the score you get in its range.
Okay, wait. Because I want to back up to something you said, right? And I love that, because this is a moment for us to hone in. So you said, just you go out, every year you get several. Oh wait. Oh, every year you go out and you get several different scores, and you said just like everybody else. Okay, I want to back up to that.
Yeah.
Because I love that everybody around you and the way you just explained it. But I don't know that that's just like everybody else, because I have not gone out and bought a score. So wait, let's back up to that a minute. So what do you mean by I get, several scores every year? And then what do you mean by even buying them? Like, I didn't know this was available to buy somewhere. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. So what I mean is, if I go to the websites everybody else would go if you went to. So you go to Credit Karma, you go to Experian, you go to Equifax, you go to TransUnion, you go to any of those sites. So I'll go to each of them separately. Sometimes you have to subscribe, and sometimes if you pay for a service, you get a score, you buy a service. So I do that. So if you just look online for scores. So I go to the same websites everybody else would. The one perk I have at Experian is a free membership to our credit monitoring service. So I get that score.
Well, that's good, because I pay $39.99 every month. So now I'm going to send some messages out like, hey, do you think you can give me some credit so I can give me some free monthly credit reporting? No, thank you for clarifying that. And I love that, because I do think for people who are out there not even checking their credit yet, right? They're not even knowing like some of the services that are available to go and check. So it's like, go and at least know what's there. I also love how you broke it down into there are 3 credit reporting agencies, 3 credit reports, but there are several different scores. And I think that is something that people don't just regularly know all the time, right? Because there's something that I'm learning or have learned over the last year. But now I'm like, oh, wow. So actually, these are different scores. Because I think we've been taught, and I say we, the collective proverbial we of society, have been taught that you have one credit score, right? But then you look at your reports and it's like, oh no, like there's actually different credit scores for the 3 credit agencies. But then you go and look at, getting a car, you like, I know my credit score was X at this place. Oh, who do you pull from? So I think like in the conversation, it's like, oh, well, who do you pull from? Do you use Equifax? Do you use TransUnion to pull your scores? Not even thinking that, like, even if they pull from one of the credit agencies and they have one that they typically go to, there are still different scores for each one of these types of lenders or lending that you're going to be going through. Like that. So I wonder, I'll tell you what my discovery was about credit over the last 4 years, I'll say, since I've been building business, is that, to your point about risk, and this is a really, to me, like a super huge point, is that it's not about your credit building alongside your everyday life as some way of tracking anybody. It is literally like mitigating risk and understanding risk, the risk you take, understanding the way you are responsible, such that you're going to go and get some capital to do some other things with your life that is absolutely available to you, right? But what it dawned on me, the reporting mechanisms and the bureaus actually don't know how much money I make. They only know how much money I move. And it was an aha moment for me, because I kept thinking, well, don't they know I don't have no money? Like, don't they know I'm trying? I'm putting a little bit toward it, because I don't have, my salary at that point was not that big, right? I'm a teacher, I'm teaching high school, and I'm like, they know I'm trying to keep my credit up, but we ain't making that much money out here, right? So, but then I realized, oh, it's about movement of money, showing itself, utilization, and after that I knew I was in the game, and the way I look at it is like, oh, now I can get in the game. What are some other myths about credit out there that you have heard people say, or that along your journey going into doing the writing and
Yeah,
working with
and you hit
Experian?
a really good point, and that's and I've said there, and it's important to know that there is no information about income or assets. So there's nothing in a credit report about how much you make. There's nothing about how much you have in a savings account or a checking account. Nothing about if you have a 401k or investments or retirement savings. None of that. What lenders are trying to do, and what the credit reports kind of help them with, is will you repay a loan regardless of how much money you have? And how much you make. Because I've also said there are a lot of rich deadbeats out there. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you use it to pay your bills either. So, that's what they're interested in. Will you pay your debts regardless of how much you make? And so that's what it's helping them do. And there are lots of myths. One of the common ones, and I saw it today again from somebody who should know better, actually, in the media, that credit scores will keep you from getting a job. They don't. Employers, when you apply for a job, never get credit scores. But I see that a lot, that your credit score will keep you from getting a job. It's not true. Employers have to get permission, and then they get a limited version of your report. And usually it's because you're going to be like an accountant, or you're managing the company's money in some way, or they use it to verify identity. But they never get a credit score. So you don't have to worry about that. That's a huge myth that I see all the time. Another is that if you pay off a bad debt, it goes away right away. It doesn't. So people think, I have a collection account, if I pay it off, will fall off the credit report. It won't right away. Your credit report's a credit history, so it'll be updated to show that it's been paid. The good news is the scores have changed, and now if you pay a collection account off, when it's reported as paid off, the scores ignore it in a lot of the new scores. So even though it's still in a report, it doesn't affect scores. So that can help a bunch. Another one that's really hard, and I probably get asked about more than anything, is if a couple's going through a divorce and they agree to pay through the court who has what bills, but it doesn't break the contracts you have with the lenders. And that's a common misunderstanding. So if you go through a divorce and you say, my ex is going to pay this bill and I'm going to pay this one, the lender doesn't change their contract. You have to go to the lender and have them change that contract, and they might not. So it's up to them to do that. So things like mortgages and houses, that can be really tough in a divorce. And so it's a really hard one, and I hear it a lot. So that's really hard. Another one that I hear, excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my voice today. Another one I hear is, when I need to talk, I lose my voice. No credit is good credit is a common myth that I hear. So if you have no credit, that's a good thing. It's not. And again, I go back to credit and debt aren't the same thing. So debt's a financial problem, but credit is a financial tool. So having some credit doesn't mean you have to carry debt, but it helps act as your financial references. Just like you said, it's when you have that credit report, it's there to work for you and help you get access to capital and resources you need in your life. So having a credit report, having some credit, good credit, is helpful. The example I give is if you have a credit card, for example, if you make a small purchase each month, pay that balance in full, $10, $20, pay it off. You have credit, but you're not carrying debt. And that shows that you're a good credit risk. And that way you're keeping your debt low, don't have any, which puts you in a better financial situation. But you're showing lenders, hey, I have a credit history and I'm good with it. So, no credit is bad when it comes to things like buying a house or buying a car, especially the more higher dollar things.
I love that. So what do you think? I mean, speaking of the no credit point, a no credit is good credit, bad, that kind of thing. So for people who are youth or coming into adulthood, right? They're moving from being in high school And, I've heard of parents doing things like adding their children as a signer to help them boost their credit. Maybe getting them. So college is a huge predatory place typically for credit cards. It's like, this is where people typically go into a not so great direction because they may be cautious, they don't have money, maybe not an understanding of credit or finances deeply. And they're like, oh, this is an opportunity to have some extra capital, right? So they actually don't have any money coming in to pay for it all the time. But I would say in general, what is some advice that you would give to youth and people who, and when I say youth, I would say like young adulthood, like you're coming from high school, maybe it's your last year in high school, you're about to transition into full-blown adulthood, whether it be a job or college or a trade or whatever that looks like for you. What should they be thinking about?
Yeah. And I have grandkids that are now in college and starting college, and we're having this discussion. So, and when I started college, I made the same mistake. I got a credit card when I signed up, I got a t-shirt and a credit card, and I got a Frisbee, and I got
the infamous t-shirt,
chance to win a computer. Yeah. So, and I found myself, and I made the same mistakes. I started charging, and then I was using one card to pay off another card, and got into trouble with the cards and had to borrow from my grandma to pay them off, and never wanted. That was the worst experience of my life. No, don't want to do that ever again. So you're right. But when you're starting out, one of the things I often talk to parents about is maybe if it's a junior, senior in high school, freshman in college, maybe add them as an authorized user to an account. And that gives you an advantage as a parent. If they're an authorized user, it means they have permission to use the card. You don't have to give it to them. So you can kind of control their spending, right? And what it does is if you're using the card or you let them use it, you kind of supervise it, teach them about what that means. So if you make a purchase, sit down at the end of the month, walk through the billing statement, say, look, we have to pay this off, and it's going to start a credit report for you. Get that report. Use it as a teaching moment, but also gives you control over how they spend. And it's really safe as an authorized user because if the account were to become negative, if it became late, the authorized user is not responsible for that debt. We'll take it at Experian anyway. We'll take it off the credit report. So it's a good way to kind of get it started. From there, it kind of evolves naturally, I think. Student loans, if you're going to college, if you're going to get a car loan or auto loan, you may need a co-signer. But yeah, those are kind of the things we see. Maybe sign for a small loan to help them get started. If you got to buy some furniture for an apartment, help them, with like a loan to get a couch and turn around and pay it off in a couple of months. And that can help get it going too.
How early should people be thinking about it? Like what makes sense for people to start their credit journey, or even just with their children to start thinking about like, how do they build their, is there some rule that says you have to be 18 to do certain things? Okay. So what would you suggest for like how early people should start thinking about it? Actually, I think this is interesting because I know of people like putting, businesses, making LLCs of their kids' names super early and trademarking and copywriting all kinds of things about the kid's name or journey. So how early should people start thinking about like actually building their kids' credit, I guess? And then the kid, becoming an adult and building their own credit. So how early?
Yeah. And I had another myth kind of related to that. I talk to new parents who will call me sometimes, say, I just had a baby and I got their social security number. Can I get their credit report too? That's a little too early. The newborn is too early.
Right.
They don't have a credit report, and you don't have a credit report until you have credit in your name. So until an account's open. Typically, I look at, when you get to that junior, senior high school, maybe late junior year, senior year, as you're getting ready to go out on your own into college, you can start talking to kids about credit when they're, first, second grade or sooner. And we kind of do that sometimes. But in terms of building credit, usually that's kind of the time frame. When you're 16 or 17, you might be, where I grew up, you wanted a car. So that can be a starting point, and it kind of makes sense. But if you think about the fact that if you're in college or you're going into the workforce, you need to have that credit because you're going to need it to help get an apartment, maybe furnish that apartment, get utilities. So, if you're 17, 18 years old, I think it's a good time to start building credit carefully.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with? Anything that you wanted to cover that I didn't cover around credit that you really were like, oh my God, I got to say this. Is there anything? And we're going to have you back. Like, I think we're going to have to figure out like some type of, time where we can do more engagements together. Cause I think one of the aims of us like doing this is just like, how do we make it so much more accessible and the knowledge so much more down to earth? And figuring that out. And I think Experian and other corporations do a great job of that already. But I think a lot of right now, a lot of content is through human delivery is super important. It feels like now more than ever when it comes to technology. So anything else, anything you're working on, anything you got coming out, the stories you'll be writing about coming up or upcoming places we can see you speak or follow you. I don't know how big you are on social media. But,
So you mentioned Experian Boost. That's another great tool to use. So if Experian.com/boost, and you can add your cell phone payments, your utility payments, your Netflix and Hulu streaming payments, on positive payments, as you mentioned. And it's free and it's totally your choice. So it's permission based. If you decide to stop, just tell us and we'll stop. So what we're seeing there is people are on average 2 out of 3 people see an increase in about 13 points on their scores. And if they're, 680 or below on a FICO scale or what we call thin file, so they have a very short credit history, we're seeing almost 19 points on average. So we're getting really good feedback there. And that's the first time that the credit bureau has ever given people control over what is showing up in their credit report. So we're really working hard at how do we help people who haven't had access before, but should be a good credit risk, get that access? How do we get them to be part of the traditional system so we can break that cycle of payday lending or predatory lending and really help them gain access? So really important. You can join us on Twitter on Credit Chat every Wednesday, 2:00 Central, noon Pacific. You can just search hashtag Credit Chat. Or you can go to ex.pn/credit chat. Now, we're also doing a series called Credit Chat Live and hashtag Credit Chat Live. So you can search that as well. And it's on Crowdcast and on Facebook Live. And join us there. Great chance to ask questions and talk about issues and learn more. So really important. And our website, of course, has really good information. My first job was writing what was called Ask Max, which became Ask Experian, which is a credit advice column. So we still answer questions about credit reports and scores. So Experian.com and search Experian.com/credit education. You can find lots of info there too.
Awesome. Well, this has been so great. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and sharing your knowledge and just really great to hear firsthand some of this experience and some of the actual tactics and myths. It's really, really great. Because I think, again, it's funny how people look at some of the companies. I remember when I was working with Google and people were like, Black people work at Google, and I'm like, yeah, it's full of people. Like, it is the thing that you see, on your phone, or is the thing that you use, right? And I think Experian could be one of those places where people is like, people work at Experian. It's like, yeah, it's not some tech machine. It's not where somebody's just a wizard behind a screen. Like, it actually is a fully functioning company with lots of people with lots of expertise to deliver and share. So I love the credit chats and the podcast, where it's just giving information to people so that they stay informed. So check those things out, y'all. Rod Griffin, the leading expert on credit from Experian. So glad to have you here. Thank you so much.
Shelly, thank you so much. And anytime, if I can help out, let me know.
Thanks for joining us, Disruptors, and congratulations. You have taken another step toward being friggin' amazing. Make sure you visit us at adoseofdisruption.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or via RSS feed. Rate and subscribe if you're all the way live. Rate and subscribe if you're all the way live. That's right. Tell a friend, rate and subscribe to keep us all the way live. And come back next week so we can disrupt some more shit.